Welcome to Bottle Rockets with Alena Sycheva, your top hockey podcast. Welcome back to Bottle Rocket. I'm Alena. Today we've got Mave, Jerry, and our special guest is a four-time Emmy Award-winning sports reporter, professor of media performance at King University, and the author of Meet Me at the Bats and Baseball Therapy, two incredible books. George Falkowski,
Oh,
welcome.
so you gave it the ethnic treatment. You gave it the Visa Falkowski.
Yes.
I
It's
like
such a
that.
pleasure to have you, George. I've got to say, your books capture what makes baseball magical. It's nostalgia, humor, heart, all rolled into one. What first inspired you to start turning those memories into stories?
Well, since it looks like we're on the Brady Bunch right now, I'd have to say it's the guy right here, Stan, because Stan, of course, was a great writer, still a great writer, and people had pestered me for years to write a book, and I'm like, what am I going to write about? Oh, I went to the World Series. Oh, gee, I went to the NHL, playoffs. And the first book, Meet Me at the Bat, was inspired by an envelope full of Yankees ticket stubs that my mom had amazingly not thrown out when I moved to Boston and go to grad school. And I started to put those on Facebook. I remember this game. I took my first girlfriend to this game, and I knew if she loved Yankee Stadium, it was meant to be. I was 16, by the way. That we're going to get married. Everything's going to be great. And of course, it was a complete and utter failure, obviously. And I did another one, and then I'm like, wait a minute, that's the book. And so I wrote an entire book of true short stories based on 31 Yankees ticket stubs. And that's how that came to be. And as it turns out, looking back at it, apparently I was using the Yankees and Yankee Stadium as a vetting service to see if I could find the right girl. And it didn't work. At least the first time around, it didn't work. And then the second book is Ballpark Therapy, which is just basically, it's a lot of reasons why we go to games, like to get away from stuff. For me, it's like, when times are tough and bills are bad and you're having a trouble at work or you have relationship problems, you just go to the game. And for 3 hours, nothing else matters except what you might throw on a 3-1 pitch to George Springer. That's it, right? That's all we care about. And as I found out with the interviewing process is that everybody goes for their own reason. So I got about 25 interviews, including some former major leaguers. I got Wade Boggs, Sparky Lyle, Rick Cerrone, Spike Owen, and Rich Gedman, former Red Sox catcher. And then I threw a couple of personal stories in. And it was really kind of a cool exercise to see why we go, why it matters. And it's a lot of unique stories about why people go to games. And it's pretty, it's fun to see why folks go and some of the really funny reasons they have for doing it. So that was kind of, and then of course this guy wrote the open for the first book. So I'm proud of that too. I got him right there on the cover. So there you go.
You want to know why my buddy George Falkowski also is an ingrate? It's a guy who credits me for something I did. I don't know what I did for him. He was a great intern even at the beginning. But one of those Emmys that he won beat me out. I remember he had to say, what the hell is this guy getting an Emmy and I'm not getting an Emmy? I'm only kidding, of course, about the ingrate. You're not an ingrate, George. You are just great.
Well, I appreciate that. And I should tell you guys, one of the things I teach at school is business communications. And you've all heard of the elevator interview, where you get 30 seconds with somebody, you're locked in the elevator, and this is your chance to make an impression. So while Stan is here and while you're here, I want to tell you the day I was brought in to meet him as a senior in college. And I had never been to a press room. I got a call from a guy named, also named George Edmondson, was a Stan intern. And I had heard that he worked for the Devils and Stan, and this was the first season. And he said, well, I'm going to grad school. I'll tell Stan, I'll pitch you to Stan. And like 2 months went by, nothing happened. And I'm like, yeah, well, whatever. The day midterms ended in the fall semester, he called me. He said, what are you doing tomorrow? Get to the Meadowlands. Stan wants to meet you. Okay, so I've got one sports coat, like a gray tweed. Stan, you've seen the picture. I still have that picture of us at the island. I got one white shirt, one stupid cloth tie, one pair of blue corduroys, and so I go, and at the old Meadowlands Arena, you had to go downstairs, and there was this big lobby, and then on the left in the corner was the press room. So I walk in, and there's Stan and the entire sports channel crew in a production meeting. Now, I'd never seen one of these before, but you know how it is. There's like 15 people around a table. They're all talking. And I'm looking around, and I don't know why Billy Smith was there. They were playing the Flyers. And there's like Fred Sherrow, who was doing Devils games on radio. And I'm like, I just did this.
Oh,
I was totally intimidated and walked out. And I was waiting for something to end. And finally, George comes out. He goes, come on, come on, come on. Stan wants to meet you. Stan's got the navy blue sports channel, blazer on with a little red and blue S on it. And he says, the interview is 2 questions. And he goes, what do you do? This is the elevator interview, except it's a press room interview. And I just said, I'm on a radio station. I write a sports column. I'm a communications major. I read your column in the Hockey News. That probably helped. I watched the Devils. I watched the Islanders. When do you start? That was it. And that was late December. And the first game I did with Stan as an intern was against Vancouver in early January of '83. Now, if you've ever been at the old Meadowlands, long, skinny hallway, locker room, officials' rooms, little things. And he hands me this article, and he tells me to go to the Vancouver dressing room to get Tiger Williams, the all-time leading penalty minutes guy. He says, go down there and ask Tiger if he'll come on the show between periods. So you walk down, and Tiger, scars all over his head. He's like in his underwear. He's got a cup of coffee. He's smoking a butt, and he's reading the paper. Stan would like you to come on between periods. He goes, okay. I'm like, oh. So I run back down the hall, and I'm so proud I've accomplished my first Stan task. And then he hands me the article. I got it out of sequence here. He goes, oh, by the way, take this down. Show Tiger this article. He says, I want to reference it. And I'm like, oh, my God, I got to go back. And again, the all-time leading penalty minutes leader who gave me a dirty look when I went down the first time. So I walked back down the hall. Excuse me, Mr. Williams. I said, Stan gave me this article. He wants to reference it during the show. Could you take a look at it? And he snatches it out of my hand. And without making eye contact, I'll edit this for the audience. He goes, I'm going to ask him the effing question. And so now I'm at this great moment, like, what do you do? Because I'm a natural smartass, right? I'm a Jersey kid. And do I just say thank you and leave, or do I say something? So he says, tell Stan I'm going to ask him the effing questions. And I get the article back, and I look at him, and I go, well, maybe that'll liven up the interview, right? And he looks at me, and he goes, okay. And I'm like, oh, my career was on the way. So there you go. Tiger Williams.
Well, I gotta start off by saying, hey, George, what do you got for me?
What do you need, man? Yeah, right. Okay, Stan, I know what that reference is. I'm going to explain it. This is from the first book. I found out in 1979 that there was a secret way to get tickets, better tickets at Yankee games. Now, everything is online. There's not even real tickets anymore. You got to get them on your phone. And then in the old stadium, and everybody remembers there were kiosks out in front of the ballpark. And these old guys would come out with their little tin, and they'd put it down, and then they'd open it up, and you get in line and go ask for tickets. Well, I was told if you go to the second booth, first window, there's a tall, thin guy with a blue fishing hat, and his name is Jim. And if you say, hey, Jim, what do you got for me? You'll get better tickets. Now, we all know that, and Stan, you were probably the same way when you started, that you always want to get the information nobody else has. Like, you have the secret in, like, you got, and so I took friends of mine from work, and they didn't believe any of this. And like, I'm 19, I get in line. These guys come out. It's Jim. He gets in the booth, puts down his tin. I'm like fifth in line, and I walk up to the booth, and 18, 19-year-old George looks up and says, hey, Jim, what do you got for me? And the guy just, and there's this moment where it's like, oh my God, he knows I'm a phony. He knows I'm a fake. He's going to tell me to get the, what out of here. And then after a second, he goes, how are you? What can I get for you? And it was like, and I said, 4 tickets. You got anything in your home plate? And he picks up the tin, and under the tin is like all the good tickets. And I was just told that you had to give him a $5 tip. So I think it was the best 32.50 I ever spent in my life. And for the rest of my time going to games at the old stadium, if I didn't have tickets, it was, "Hey Jim, what do you got for me?" So I'm sure Jim's no longer with us, and there's not even a ticket booth anymore. But that was some inside info that got me like scored big points with dates and with friends and stuff. So it was pretty cool.
I have a question for George. Why don't you do a hockey book now?
That's next. It's going to be meet me at the rink. How about that?
Mm.
And I've already got some stuff that I started for another project that I put aside when I started the second book. One, you know the story. I'm not going to get into it and spoil it all here, but every time the Bruins retire a number, have a big night at the Garden, they're like, "Well, when Ray Bork gave up that number 7 for Espo, like 2 people knew about it," and I'm like, 3 people knew about it because I did. And there's a whole intertwined story of how I found out working for Nesson that night that the Bruins were going to do it, that our cameras were ready when it happened, and how I got it done. And I've never gotten any credits. Maybe this is the first time. So thank you. I appreciate it. But there will be a hockey book. That's next.
I got to say, George, your books are amazing. I mean, just spending the few minutes that I've spent with you here, I can tell you write the same way that you speak. And
Well,
it's,
that's kind of how we're taught, right? When you're in
yeah,
TV news, it's like write how you talk, don't talk like you write. So I think that
and it's, well, it's very down to earth, very relatable, I love good stories like that. That is my thing. I just love a good story. That's why I like Stan so much, because I can just ask him one question and he'll go. And then I learn so much. But my favorite story of the first book was actually the teacher and the
Mr.
Yankee bumper
Mulder.
sticker.
Oh, the bumper sticker, Mr. Cancella. Oh my God. He was mad at me for telling the story, but in a good way. Just so you guys know, he wasn't actually one of my teachers, but I knew him from the history department. He was a huge Red Sox fan and still is to this day. And so in the beginning of 1978, and Stan, you wrote a book about the 78 Yankees. You remember the first half of that season was a complete disaster. And by July, they were light years out of the pennant race. And Mr. Cancella gave me crap my entire senior year. He'd be like, Yankees, and he had the Boston accent. He showed up at graduation wearing a red and blue Red Sox batting helmet just to kind of zing me. Well, that summer, the Yankees charged back. They had that Boston massacre in September. Bucky hits the home run in October 2nd, 1978 to help win the division. They go to the World Series against the Dodgers, so you're going to like this part. The Dodgers win the first 2 games, and Reggie Jackson strikes out to end game 2. Famous pitching duel with Bob Wells, 10 pitching. And so the next day, I was going back to the high school. I was a freshman in college because my other teacher friend, Mr. Multer, had an extra ticket for game 3 of the World Series, so I had to go pick up the ticket. And I'm out in the parking lot flirting with the girls, and a car drives by like a drive-by in LA real slow, and this face sticks out of the window, and it's Mr. Cancel, and he goes, "Strike 3!" And he's laughing, and Reggie struck out, and he just drives away. And I'm like, I don't normally give people a hard time unless you come after me first. Long story, Yankees win the next 4. Next 4 games, win the World Series, and the next day, I went to the high school, snuck in, they all knew me, went to the back of his first class and just sort of like this. And before I did that, I had this bumper sticker that said, "I love the Yankees," and I stuck it on his blackboard. And then I went to the back of the class and I just hid. And he came in, and you guys know when your workday starts, you're busy, you're running around, you're trying to get your papers organized. I do it today. And the kids are giggling. And then he kind of looks up like, "What's so funny?" And there's one little rat fink Mets fan girl in the front row. And she just goes like this, points back like this, points back to the class. And I just pop up like this. And he turns around and sees the sticker, and his eyes burst, and all kinds of words came out of his mouth that might have gotten another teacher suspended, but I knew it was with love. And Mr. Cancella, Chuck, and we are friends to this day. But that's that. I got my pound of flesh back out of Chuck by putting that. And then apparently the sticker stayed on the board all year. They could not get it off, no matter what they did. This "I love the Yankees" bump sticker just stayed on the black. He had to deal with it every time he showed a film or slides or whatever it was. I got them back. I had a good time with that.
Georgie, I got a hockey story for your new book, your new hockey book. In
Okay.
1954-55, when I worked for the Rangers in publicity, Gump Worsley was in goal. And Gump, we had a terrible team. We missed the playoffs. And one day, a guy from Life magazine doing a profile on Worsley, and remember, they had a bad team. So he says to Worsley, which team in the league, we only had 6 teams then, and we were the Rangers. He says to the Gump Worsley, which team in the league gives you the most trouble? And Gump says, the Rangers.
I think Shesterkin would give the same interview today. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
We had some very funny characters, and one of them was the coach, Phil Watson. He was French Canadian, but he spoke English with a broken accent. And this is just a crazy scene. They played the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks were a terrible team also, and Rangers were coming into their own. And a guy on the Blackhawks named Hector Lalonde, who never did much of anything, scored a 3-goal hat trick. And after the game, we asked, Watson, well, what do you think of Lalonde? What he did? And he couldn't think of anything. He was so infused with anger. He said he's gutless chicken and printed all in one, of all the stupid things to say.
Wow.
George, you mentioned a great story involving Hall of Famer Jim Rice and
Yes.
old school game of pepper. What drew you to that story, and what does it reveal about how the game used to be played and respected?
Well, it's a game that they don't play anymore. And if you go to any ballpark now, and you can even see it on TV, if you see the signage behind home plate by the dugouts, there are always signs that say, no pepper. It's always no, and they're not sprinkling anything on your hot dogs or your pizza or whatever. It was a game for those listening or don't, where you just took a bat and you had 3 or 4 people would stand back about 25 feet and you would just chop the ball out. And it was a reaction game, right? It was just a game to, kind of, and if you missed it, you were out. And that's how the game was played. But I guess like too many fans got hit in the face, lost a couple of teeth. Teams got tired of paying for dental work, so they stopped it. So you don't see it anymore. And this was summer of '89. It was Jim Rice's last season with the Red Sox. He was not the most pleasant guy to deal with at the time in media. There's a lot of reasons for it, and I'd say that most of them were really legitimate. But I had finally gotten in to do an interview that spring. And he looked at me the first 5 minutes, just sort of, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not easily intimidated by athletes or anybody, but Jim's giving you the look. It's like, and then I don't know what I'd asked or what the question was, but he loosened up. He was really cool. He got finished, shook my hand, said thanks, walked away. I lived to tell about it. So summer comes. It's his last year. The Red Sox were on the road. Me and my reporter, Tom Larson, and our photographer go into the park to shoot an open for a feature about left-handers. How goofy they are. I can vouch for that personally. And so Tom's got a glove and I've got a glove, and I'm going to be off camera throwing to Tom. I'm going to shoot the video and shoot the open for the feature. And Rice happens to be running laps at the park. And he used to wear this black conditioning shirt. You ever see these rubbery looking things, and he's sweating. It's August, it's 88 degrees. And he comes by us once and I just go, hey, Jim. And he goes, bleh. It just keeps going. I go, oh, well, okay. Goes all the way around Fenway Park, comes back again. And without even making eye contact, I can even reenact it for you. He just kind of walks by me and says, y'all want to play some pepper? And Stan knows me as well as anybody. I'm just like, sure, get a bat. What else am I going to say to the guy, right? Camera guy runs over and goes, did Jim Rice talk to you? Because it was accepted that Jim Rice didn't talk to anybody. And I said, yes, he did. He asked if we wanted to play pepper. He goes, he did? What did you say? I said, I told him to get a bat. You did what? Like, you're not supposed to even talk to Jim. Even in the post game, you would have to run away. And sure enough, Rice comes out of the dugout like 2 minutes later with a bat, 3 baseballs, and tells the 3 of us to line up by the screen behind home plate. It's 88 degrees, like a Thursday afternoon. in our street clothes, and now we're playing Pepper with Jim Rice. And he's funny. He had this magic. He could handle a bat. He could put it like right in the keyhole with it. And so he'd let us catch like 6 or 7 in a row, and then he would put spin on it, and we'd screw it up. He'd go, "Come on, 10 in a row, 10 in a row." And then he'd get to 8, and he could hit it so it was exactly equidistant between the 2 guys. So it was like right here. So you would start, the other guy would start, and bang, it would hit the screen. Start over again. If you threw the ball inside to him, he'd say, "Keep it out of my kitchen. Keep it." And you're like, don't get Jim Rice angry. And we literally played in 88-degree heat in street clothes, Pepper with Jim Rice for 20 minutes at Fenway Park. The whole time I'm thinking, this guy's a future Hall of Famer. I'm playing Pepper with Jim Rice. We went back to work, sweating, had to go to the car, get a change of shirts and stuff. And it was just this great moment. And every time I have seen him since, he has been great. I met him when he was on his Get Me Hall of Fame tour. It was 2009, the last year of eligibility. He was in Lakewood, New Jersey at a Blue Claws, a minor league game. And we went in, interviewed him. "Jim, would it be okay to meet my family?" "Absolutely." Brought the kids out at the time, took pictures with everybody. So Jim Rice is not the guy that the media painted him, especially Boston. And I think Stan would agree that as tough as New York is media-wise, Boston's worse because there's only one team in each league. You have 6 states that are zooming in on that. And I've seen it firsthand. I would say Boston, at least it used to be, much harder, much meaner, much nastier. At least in New York, you've got people thinking about the Islanders and the Rangers and the Yankees and the Mets and the Giants and the Jets. There's other things, not up there. And now what does Jim Rice do for a living? He worked for Nesson, my old station, and he's an analyst pregame, postgame. So maybe I helped the media guy. I feel pretty good about that.
Good. When you do your next baseball book, which I know you will, I got to tell you guys what was the greatest pun, extemporaneous pun in baseball history. The Dodgers had a guy named Frenchie Bordegaray that he was very fast. He was like a utility guy, and they used to put him into, whatever, steal bases, things like that. So he was on first. And this is about 1939, Brooklyn Dodgers. They were getting crazier than ever. Anyhow, Frenchie bolts for second, slides under the tag, knows he's safe, but the umpire calls him out. And Frenchie jumps up and he starts arguing with the umpire. And, when you argue, sometimes spit comes out, and he accidentally spits on the umpire. So he gets thrown out of the game, and he's fined $50 in addition to that. So the next day, the writers come to see Frenchie in the Dodger dugout before the game. And Bill Rhoda of the World Telegram says, "Frenchie, what do you think of this? You stole the base, he calls you out, and you got a $50 fine. You got thrown out of the game, all for accidentally spitting on the umpire. What's your comment?" And Frenchie says, "That's more than I expectorated."
There it is.
Getting back to Jim Rice for a second, George, I read a story years and years and years ago that I don't know if it was him or another batter, but hit a foul ball that hit a 10-year-old kid, and Jim went into the stand, grabbed the kid.
Yes.
Is that right?
Absolutely true. This is maybe a year or two before I joined the network. They have screens up everywhere now. They've employed that in the last like 7 or 8 years in baseball. Hockey did it about 20 years ago when a young lady got hit with a puck, and I think it was in Columbus, and she was hit in the head, and then later passed away from it. So this kid was sitting near the dugout at Fenway Park, and if you've ever sat in those seats, I never liked sitting there because it's very nerve-wracking. Because a foul ball, you'll never react to it in time if it's hit hard enough. And this little boy got hit in the face and was bleeding. And everybody's like, what do we do? And Jim Rice came out of the dugout, picked up this boy, brought him into the dugout so the Red Sox team doctor could treat him immediately. They got him in the clubhouse. They got him to the hospital. Kid was fine later on. It was very, very scary. But there's this famous picture, I'm sure if you Google it, Jim Rice carrying this little boy. And I'll add this in, and this I still remember the date. I guess this is why we write books. July 1st, 1979. I'm at a Yankee Red Sox game in the Bronx, And Jerry Remy passed away a couple of years ago, the famous Red Sox broadcaster. He played second base for them. He blew up his knee sliding in the home plate in the first inning. Like he tried to tag up on a short pop up. He crashed into the catcher, destroyed his knee. And Jim Rice came out, and you could find a picture of him, same thing, lifting up Jerry Remy like he was that little boy at Fenway and carrying him off the field because he was in such pain and such a bad shape because he had destroyed his kneecap. And that kind of, it didn't end his career, but it certainly set it about. But Rice, kind, generous, quiet. I've had friends that worked with him all these years, since I left Boston. And they all say that once you're in with Jim Rice, you're in. But don't ever do something to get him mad. And that was the case every time I've seen him since. He's always been super friendly. If I'm in media capacity, somebody is with me like, "Oh my God, you know Jim Rice?" And I'm like, "Well, I also know Stan Fischler." I want to make that point clear to you. But,
Just a quick question, George. Do you have a nickname, or did you ever acquire one?
I did. I can't find the baseball to show it to you, but I played for the Boston Red Sox media team. And there's a chapter on the media team in the new book, which is basically the writers and radio people. The Yankees and Red Sox for the last 30 years have been very, very kind. And what they do is they give you access to their field. Like when the Red Sox are in New York, the middle game, the New York writers will play Boston guys. And when you're at Fenway for 3 games, the middle game, the Boston guys will host, but you're not playing at the park. You're playing at Fenway Park. You're playing at Yankee Stadium. And I amazingly got onto the Boston media team because I don't know what you wanted to be growing up, but I wanted to be a baseball player and be a Yankee. So since God has a sense of humor, the only way I could get on the field at Yankee Stadium and play was to wear a Red Sox uniform, which was like, okay, every man has his price. We got to do it. Do it. And in 1994, here it is. The video is on YouTube to prove it. I hit an inside the park home run at Fenway Park off of John Harper, the Daily News, and it's on video. Phil Rizzuto made fun of me after the game. It's all on tape. And Carl Bean, who was a longtime public address announcer, he passed away about 10 years ago. Good guy, radio guy. He nicknamed me Boomer, A, for the home run, B, because my name was George. You're dovetailing that with George Scott, the famous Red Sox first baseman, whose nickname was Boomer. And it confuses my family or friends if I'm at Fenway Park and I bump into somebody that I used to know from the media team, and I go, Boomer! And that's me. So I don't think I sound like George Scott. I don't wear puka beads like George Scott used to wear. They're really cool beads. And just for the sake of conversation, they once asked George Scott about these great puka necklaces he used to wear. And he said it wasn't puka beads. It was the teeth of second baseman that he crashed into trying to break up double plays. So there you go. So there you go. There's Boom. There you go. Frank Simonetti, by the way. And we have a Frank Simonetti story if he wants it. The Bruins either called me Curious for Curious George or Falcon or Falcon Crest after the old show. So Frank still calls me Falcon Crest to this day. And if I see any of my old guys, if we go to the alumni, I always get the Curious thing. Bob Sweeney tagged me with that when I was with Boston. Curious. Swoop. I mean, hockey's nicknames, right? So there you go.
I watched the Panthers with the Bruins the other day, and Marchand came back the first time to Bruins, and he teared up. What do you?
And it wasn't just. I love it. I mean, like I referenced the Ray Bork and Esposito. I Montreal. I saw the ceremony they did to honor Dryden, and that was just phenomenal. But the Bruins really know how to honor former players or great players. And I was amazed that so many people from Boston were rooting for Marchand in the playoffs. The Bruins weren't going anywhere last year, and they're not going anywhere this year, but they were so happy that he won the cup. And I'm not even a big fan of the guy. I think he's a little too chippy, likes to skate with his elbows up, hurt people and stuff. But there's no question where he stands in Bruins history. Statistically, way up on the charts. He's going to get his number retired. And that was emotional, man. I'm watching like Todd Marchand. Not Todd, listen to me. That's another guy. But watching him literally start to tear. He almost cried. The only other time I saw him crying on the bench was Game 7 against St. Louis, and he had a reason to cry in that game too. But but that was awesome. I thought the Bruins did a great job, and the Garden fans don't need to be told when to cheer and when to make noise and who to cheer for. The Boston fans get it, and that's something I've always admired.
The great part of this guy, he's a wonderful character. Right down to the finals last spring, he's making a big deal about eating ice cream. I thought I was the only one who made a big deal about ice, and it's now part of his character. And of course, you gotta love a little guy like him that's pleasant, as opposed to a guy like Ted Lindsay, who was a little guy and he was never pleasant. So, there was something there's always something, because he looks funny, but he's got this cockamamie mustache. I love the guy. Love him.
Love Marshy. Marshy is fun. I
Well,
actually met
he's
him in Florida. I went to the signing because I wanted to get his signature on a jersey. I brought my Canadian one, and I said I'm actually a Leafs fan among all the Panthers.
oh no, don't do that.
And he was like, "Sorry about that." Yeah, he's very funny. He's great, great sense of humor.
Well, I'm still
Well,
mad about concussing Marcus Johansson a couple of years ago with the Devils. It was a cheap hit. So, the fan still lives deep inside you sometimes. So, but
I
a great
think
player. Absolutely.
I think Nurse Alena has to tell us how she's going to fix the Maple Leafs.
Oh. Will they be fixed? Will they be fixed? From watching that game last night, I have no words. Like, we lost to Sabres.
Sabres are getting good.
Oh,
It's
the
about time.
Sabres are great this year. I was just talking to T-Bag, and I was like, maybe Sabres are going to win the Stanley Cup.
Even Buffalo deserves to win a game every now and then. Remember?
That's right. Tell that to the Rangers.
I told Alena that they have a chance to make up for it today because the same two teams play in Toronto. So there's always hope. There's always tomorrow.
Well, the good
So
news is that they can
I
play
wanna-
badly now because no one's watching. They're watching
Exactly.
watching the forecast.
I'm wearing booed.
I want to know from T-Bag, what's wrong with the Canucks?
Oh man, they're too slow. Now they got Montreal tonight, and that's going to be a crap show if they don't find a way to slow the Montreal forwards down and play to their level. It's going to be ugly. But yeah, they've got injuries.
Speaking of Montreal, because I was watching the game, the Quebec Hartford game the other night, which again was a feast for the eyes. My God. Apparently, they're going to wear those Quebec jerseys again and again. And next month, I think it's right around Thanksgiving weekend, they're going to wear them against Montreal. And if you can bring back Louis Slager and Claude Lemieux and all those guys and have them have a fight between periods that'll go to the next period and the next period, that's some Adams Division hockey right there. I love that.
I tell you, anybody who says they could take fighting out of hockey should take a look at the video of the playoff between the Nordiques and the Canadians. I'll never forget that. We were watching. I had at least one of my kids was there, and my wife, and it was just, it was genuine, intense hatred. That's what it was. And it could only be solved with a war on the ice. You remember that game?
That was the Good Friday game. That's I was referring to Louis Slager because they had a big tussle going on at the end of the period, and I forget who the linesman was keeping the guys apart, and Louis Slager reached over and just caught one of the Canadians and knocked him out. So the brawl went for like 20 minutes. They finally got everybody back to the rooms, and then they came back out for the next period, and the brawl started all over again. And it was just so. I think they called it the Good Friday Massacre or something like that. Stan, you remember the big one in Boston in the end of '86, December of '86, I think, where it spilled into the hallway down, and I was working the game, and those guys came up the ramp into the hallway on the stairs. I mean, it was frightening because it's literally 30 feet for me to see this fight going on, and so the Montreal, Quebec, Montreal, Boston. Every time Boston and Montreal played, you're going to get at least 2 fights times 2 with John Cordick, Chris Nyland on one side, Jay Miller and Lyndon Byers, God rest his soul, on the other side. And the funniest part about that brawl, the brawl in the hall, which is also on YouTube, is that when they finally cleared the battlefield of all the debris and bodies and shell holes and everything else that was going on, the guy's name was Herbie, big dude at the garden who kind of took care of the visitor dressing room. He came to me and said, "George, you got to help me out." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I got no place to put these guys." They had 5 guys get ejected, and he had them go to my studio up the stairs, one level. So I had Chris Nyland, Corson, Maley, Claude Lemieux, and I forget who, and they were all there watching this little 6-inch TV, and I'm babysitting these guys. And Nyland's the ringleader. He's cursing and yelling and doing his thing. And Claude Lemieux is welling up because Nevin Marquardt got him with an uppercut. And at one point, I called my director. He says, "Why are you calling me?" I said, "Well, do you want a Montreal guy for the post game?" He says, "Why are you asking me now?" And I said, "Because they're all here." And he looked at the he looked at the TV monitor in the truck, and there was this shot of all 5 guys, like all watching the game. And he took the camera shot. And all of a sudden, Nyland realized they were on camera, and he went, and then they took it away again. And I was George Falkowski, professional enforcer babysitter. So but
I remember.
Quebec versus
remember
in a couple of weeks. Oh my God, that's going to be beautiful.
the sucker punch is memorable. Memorable. It's
Right
like-
over the top.
Yes, and I think the Peter Stastny was on Quebec at that time, and of course he was a good target.
Now, you guys, you like Quebec stories, and Stan, you may remember this. My first year with Stan, 82, 83, and in March, the Nordiques came to the Meadowlands, and I'm all pumped up to see the Stastny brothers, right? So I'm going to go stand down by the Zamboni gate and let them come out for warm-ups, and I want to see these guys come out. And I think Anton wore 20, Peter wore 26. I forget. Peter wore 20. I forget who the other guy wore.
Mary,
They all, and they all come out wearing the numbers they were wearing were 36, 37, and 38 with no names. And I'm like, what's going on? What? Somebody got in the room and stole the sweaters
No.
before they got to the rink. So they had to play the entire game with like goalie numbers. It was a pretty amazing night.
I got to tell you, Peter Stastny really shut me up once. He was in his prime, and I was doing an interview, and we had it, photographers and the whole thing for the Hockey Pictorial magazine. And, he and I got along great until this moment. And I said, you're one of the great, maybe the greatest Czech players of all time. And he looked at me like I had 5 heads, and he said to me, "I'm going to teach you a lesson right now." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Never, ever call me a Czech. I'm from Slovakia, and you better get that into your head right now." And that's how he told me.
How about that?
Chris Nyland, playing for Montreal, wasn't he from Boston?
Yeah, he used to. He was from a town just outside of Boston, and he loved the fact that I think he was the last pick in the draft. He went to Northeastern. He started that brawl in the hall by sucker punching Paul Boudelier, one of Stan's old boys from the island. And then when he was getting escorted off the ice, he took a swing at Ken Lensman because the Boston Garden people thought it'd be a brilliant idea to put the visiting team dressing room at the exit where the Bruins bench was. And as he went off the ice, he took a swing, and then it went down the hall. And remember Terry O'Reilly, his coach was holding Mike McPhee like by his sweater, like I'm ready to go, even though I'm wearing a nice camel brown shirt and tie. And so every time Nyland would come to the garden, if we'd be shooting video, him coming in, for morning skate, he'd be waving his finger right in our face. Stand with Cup ranks in '86, and he relished it. And then they brought him in. Milbury signed him. They brought him in, and that opening night, I was the guy in the opening of the Zamboni anthem, waving each guy out as they were called. And except for Ray Bork and Cam Neely, Chris Nyland got the loudest cheer that opening. I think it was 1990. And of course, Nyland, Milbury decides that he should be rewarded for a long career, and he names him to the All-Star team, right? So Chris Nyland is going to be an All-Star. And as it happened at some nights at the old Garden, you'd get there and the parquet was down, the basketball court. So Nyland and a few of the Bruins would have to shoot hoops, and Nyland jumped up and came down and landed on a ball, sprained his ankle, and couldn't play in the All-Star game. Sorry, Knuckles.
No. Yeah.
The craziest thing about Boston Garden, when they built it was built by the Madison Square Garden people in the late 20s. What they did was they placed the visiting dressing room on the other side, what was basically the lobby. So the visiting players had to walk among the fans. And, you can only do so much with a couple of cops to protect them. And I have pictures. I have pictures of these guys, particularly the Maple Leafs. They hated the Maple Leafs. Trying to get to the fan, whacking them and crazy stuff. I don't know when they stopped that, but I know that this would be right through the late 30s.
Well, I'll tell you what, when I was working there and my job learned under the tutelage of Stan back in the day with Sports Channel was to get between periods guests. And at Nassau Coliseum or the Meadowlands, you were under the stands, not at the Garden. And so they would pull these curtains like that was security to keep fans from getting to the players and stuff in the hallway. So if I got a Boston Bruin, I had to walk him from one end of the rink to center ice up the steps into our studio. And by the time the interview was done, the curtains were open so the fans could smoke and drink their beer. And I would have to walk the players back to the dressing room through the fans. And all I can tell you, another Nyland thing, I'm walking him back to the Bruins room, and about 50 feet, nobody has seen him yet. And then finally, all the smoke is going, and Nyland is going, he's smelling all the cigarette smoke. And finally, some guy, remember Zubas, the pants? They brought him back a couple of years ago, those kind of crazy, baggy, colorful pants. There's this typical meathead from like South Boston is in the hallway with his beer and his cigarette. And he goes, "Hey, Knuckles." And Nyland just looks at him and he goes, "Nice effing pants," and just keeps going. And it was like, I'm going to protect Chris Nyland from anybody, but that was it. But he just looked at the guy. He's like, "Nice effing pants." It just kept going. That was just Chris. So that was.
Were either of you at the game where Mike Milbury, as a player, went up into the stands?
Yeah, it was in New York.
It
was at the Garden.
Can you
as
tell
a matter of fact, I was
what he
buddies
did
with Milbury when he was fighting the head of the union, which was who was the head of the union?
Eagleson.
Right? Al Eagleson. So I had been. He was a very, very gutsy guy, and nobody messed with Eagleson. He was like the emperor at that time, and Milbury really took him to task. I wrote a couple of hockey news articles, and Mike and I became very good friends. But what happened? That was one of the greatest invasions of the fans in any sport. And of course, it wasn't just Mike. Mike was most notorious because he had the good sense to take off his shoe and whack this idiot fan. I shouldn't say idiot fan, but
He was an idiot.
This Ranger fan with his shoe. And of course, what the heck does the fans never expect to be assaulted, right? Not in there. That's the most expensive seat in the damn Garden. The other invasion was when, I don't know whether you know this story, the Rangers were playing the Red Wings, and it was a very big game. And the Red Wings, I forget who got the goal, and Emil Francis, who was the GM, didn't think it went in. And he went running all the way around to the goal judge to attack the goal judge, who happened to be Arthur Reichert, who was a great tennis player and a very distinguished guy. And before Francis could get to the guy, two fans intercepted Francis, and they were beating the crap out of Francis. And the Ranger players see this, and they start climbing over the glass to rescue Francis. This was an insane. Imagine trying to climb over the damn glass. I know it was Dick Hatfield, Arnie Brown, and I think Rod Sealing. In any event, that the fans who intercepted Francis sued Emil. It was a long period, and I think they won. And Arthur Reichert insisted that he made the right call. And of course, we didn't have replay in those days, but it was like they could have used a ladder. These guys just over the glass and then up to the cat. Crazy. You have to be there.
Had to be.
I just love that visual of Mike Milbury beating a guy with his own shoe.
Gorgeous.
They didn't call him Mad Mike for nothing, let me tell you. Love
Yeah,
the
he was
guy.
a treat, especially when he became coach of the Bruins. He was a real treat. So
He was a guy who went to Colgate, and his then girlfriend used to go to practice when he only practiced alone, and she would pass the puck to him. He wound up marrying her.
It's the same. The fan fell over to the box where
I
Domi was
don't.
sitting.
Yep.
Yeah, and he got fined for that, or I don't know, suspended. Was he?
Well, I don't know, but that fan sure got a surprise, didn't he?
Yes.
It
Yeah.
was
think
on to meet Ty Domi. He got his chance.
People don't realize it to now, but there never was glass or anything along the sideboards for years, decades. And one of the most hated but beloved by me, number 12 on the Maple, Wild Bill Ezenicki, was a real good, legit tough guy. And of course, the Ranger fans hated him. And there was a woman named Sally Lark who had a seat right next to the penalty box, which was great because she used to schmooze with guys when they were sitting in the penalty box. And in those days, both teams sat in the same bench. It was hard to believe. Anyhow, Wild Bill Ezenicki is lining up for a face-off right in front of Sally Lark, who hated Wild Bill Ezenicki, and she pulled out the biggest hat pin and gave him a shot in his tuchus. Which would have been good for a game misconduct. It's great. Well, I'll tell you another great Boston story at the Old Garden. The Bruins had a wonderful farm team in the old Eastern League called the Olympics, and they were playing at the Garden, and something happened at a face-off circle right by the boards, and there were at least 7 fans having a fight with about 4 or 5 Bruins. And this thing, I was at that game. It kept going because how do you break up? These guys. How many ushers can get there in time to do it? I mean, these were wild. I miss snowboards. No glass.
Okay, we have time for one more question. I want to go back to Jays because I'm all pumped from the World Series. So I want to ask George. So the Jays took game 1 in the World Series, huge statement win. Do you think that momentum is something they can actually ride through the series, or is LA too deep to let them run away with it?
Well, I was just talking about this with a friend last night that John Sterling, the longtime announcer, did the Islanders back in the day, just retired from the Yankees after 200 years as a broadcaster. He used to say momentum is as good as the next day's starting pitcher. So that's really it. I mean, there's a mental part of the game, and the Dodgers might be a little surprised that they got their butts kicked unexpectedly, and maybe I would say, is it good? Yes, because having 1 win in the World Series is better than having no wins in the World Series, because now they've only got to win 3 more out of 6, and you split it, you win. Let's see how the pitching works tonight. Let's see how the pitching works in games 3 and 4, because that's really where it is. Starting pitching, defense is everything. Yeah, defense is everything. The Yankees still haven't learned that. As far as like Toronto shows you that if you hit the baseball, good things happen. Instead of trying to hit a home run on every pitch and the numbers telling you what pitches never works. And the Yankees, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and changes. I have a friend, I know Stan will appreciate this, my buddy Charlie Jones, Long Island. And when we see crazy stuff happen in baseball or the Giants, football, or whatever, or hockey, and they'll do something that is stupid, like the Giants playing prevent defense against Denver last week. It just was never going to work. It has never worked. It never works. And his famous line is, "You know this, I know this. How do they not know this?" And that's the key. But I love watching the Blue Jays because they put the ball in play. They foul pitches off. They have Don Mattingly on the staff. And we all down here want Don Mattingly to get a World Series ring because if you think about it, he was in the Yankee pinstripes for 18 years, right? The team has been in 41 World Series out of 122 years. So my math's not that good, but that's 1 in 3, right? And somehow this guy picked 18 years to be a Yankee where they never made the World Series. Yet here he is as a Blue Jay. So am I happy that the Blue Jays beat the Yankees? Not so much. But am I happy Don Mattingly might get a ring? I'm very happy. So again, going back to the first thing, go Blue Jays, but it's all starting pitching and making the LA Dodger pitchers work. Foul those balls off, put them in play. Baseball the way we remember it, right? Not 3-run home runs, but string a bunch of hits together, steal bases, catch the ball. That's always a big thing. Yankees forget about that on occasion too. So I love it. So go Blue Jays. You heard me say it.
Well, didn't the Yankees win the World Series the year before Mattingly came aboard, and then the year after he left? Isn't it?
No. They lost the World Series in '81, and he came up for a little while in '82. Everybody loved his swing, and then in 1983, this is how the Yankees hit this great mystique of everything's connected. Mickey Mantle replaced Joe DiMaggio, right? And then Bobby Mercer replaced Mickey Mantle, and that was my favorite player growing up. And then Mattingly came along, and so Mercer retired to make room for Mattingly, and so we had this great, you know, continuing chain of Yankeeness with these great ball players. And they made the wild card the first year of the wild card in '95. They blew the 2-game lead at Seattle, and that was it. There was no 16 teams getting into playoffs like the NBA. And you think of the teams, the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Orioles, that would have won more World Series or had more playoff opportunities if today's rules existed 30 years ago, but they didn't. So no, Mattingly, 81 was the last year they lost the series to LA. And 83, he came up and took over for good for the next 14 years. So that's it. But yeah, no, but and he was a coach on the Yankee team that is the only team to blow a 3-game-to-none lead to Boston in '04. It was that close in '04, and they blew 4 in a row like nobody had ever. So Donnie
You have
Baseball.
You have time for one more momentum story?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is the 1942 World Series, the Yankees against the Cardinals. And in the first game, the Yankees killed the Cardinals. I think they were leading something like 9-0. And in the 9th inning, the Cardinals had this fantastic rally. They got it up to 6 with the bases loaded. And who's at bat but a rookie named Stan Musial? And what does he do? He pops out, and the Yankees win the game, okay? But the Cardinals got so much momentum from that rally, they almost had the win, the winning run was at the plate, that guess what? The momentum went to St. Louis, and they won the next 4 straight and the World Series.
Yep.
And that's
Why
that's
I'm
about
smiling?
Redbirds, not bluebirds.
I hate the Yankees.
An A's fan, and they're going to play in Vegas, so he loves that too. So. Stan's not getting a Sacramento T-shirt anytime soon, though. He's not going to go A's.
Well, Boomer, this has been a treat. Love talking to you. Hopefully, you'll come back, and when the hockey book comes out, and I'll be grabbing that one for sure. Your books are awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed them. 10 out of 10. Well, 9.99 for the first one because I'm a Blue Jay fan. So,
well, see, I'll say this about the first one, even though it was a Yankee themed book. Meet me at the bat with that old smokestack that looked like a baseball bat outside the stadium, which still exists, by the way. It's just down the block where the old stadium used to be. I had a lot of fans of Phillies, Red Sox, Mets, Dodgers, because the stories about your parents, your dates, your friends, the people that you went to the games with, that's what it's really about. And yes, it's a Yankee theme because that's where I was going as a teenager and as a young college guy. But you remember your first, in fact, you know what? I'm going to pull it off the wall. I want to show you guys something that I have. If you have a picture of Stan, this isn't it. I have a printed copy of the first Yankee game I ever went to from the Daily News in 1970. And there it is, Yanks wallop A's. It was cap day. And as I famously said on TV, when you see those kids, I could have been any one of those kids on cap day, but I wasn't. But yeah, this is my first game. So that's how much the game has meant to me. I also have on my wall of fame here, Stan and I with the Stanley Cup in Dallas. I've got that photo up. I've got Adam Henrique's goal over here against the Rangers. I've got some Bruins stuff here. It's been a crazy career that a New Jersey kid who grew up rooting for the Yankees and then the Devils would wind up falling in love with Boston with the Red Sox and the Bruins, and then coming back to cover all the Devils Cups. So life is and it ain't over, I hope, but it's been a journey. I owe a lot to the guy right here. I'm going to point. There he is. Right there he is. He asked me those 2 questions, and I passed the most difficult interview of my life in 30 seconds. And
when do you start?
What do you do? When do you stop?
I love it.
That's it. I owe it all to that guy right there. So there you go. And if you go to YouTube, just type in George Yankees Phil Rizzuto, and you will see the famous home run. It's in living color. Right there.
I'll do that as soon as we're off.
I bet. Well, I appreciate you guys having me.
Amazing.
Good to see all of you and the Maven.
You have to come back on the show.
Hey, if you just want to talk, pick up the phone. I'll even do that. I'm easy.
I'll leave you with one word, one sentence.
We need a joke of the
Alena,
day.
What did I tell you about George?
He never shuts up. That's probably what he said.
No, great stories, great stories.
Stan has not given us joke of the day yet. Let's go. We need something here.
What you got, Stan?
Fastest shrink joke. Two shrinks meet in the street. One says, "You're fine. How am I?"
Which is right there with Stan's other fast joke, which is a skeleton walks into a bar and says, "I need 2 things, a beer and a mop." There you go.
A potato walks into a bar. The bartender says, "You're a potato. What the hell are you doing here in my bar?" The potato says, "I'm celebrating the fact that I can walk."
Now you know what every pregame dinner was like at Sports Channel and MSG. So there you got
it. Yeah, we could go on all day.
Thank you so much for joining us on Bottle Rocket. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see T-Bag and Mave next week. And George, hopefully we'll see you soon on the show.
Let's go to a game next time you're down here. Let's meet up. We'll go to a bar.
Let's go. Any day.
Let's do it.
Sports World
Absolutely.
Monday. Let's go.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye, Mave. Thank you so much.
Georgie, great to see you, buddy.
I'm going to start pulling my hair back with water like you did. I want to get that same look. Working.
See ya.
See you guys.
As they say, see ya and be here.
There you go.
Later, Gator.